Hello, I'm Mariana Cordier. Welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The erosion of the federal workforce continues as experienced workers retire and leave because of policy disagreements. Bruce Fowler, on the board of the Maryland National Active and Retired Federal Employees, known as NARF, will explain what is happening. The Committee for Montgomery's mission is to support the county's needs in the state legislature in Annapolis. Maria Maisto, its executive director, will review the 2019 session and tell us about CFM's program at its June annual meeting. County Executive Mark Elridge has important decisions to make about his administration's new leadership, with hires coming for several department heads, and most importantly, the Chief of Police. Grace Rivera-Oven, who comments for this show, will tell us what is happening. The issue of immigration remains unresolved in our country and is the subject of much talk on TV and elsewhere. While some of the talk is negative, there are also those who point to the major contributions made in our country from people who chose to come here from elsewhere. Shu-Ping Chan, a local attorney, will comment. So Bruce, thank you for coming on the show.
Happy to be here. And
so you're a part of the Maryland chapter of NARF, is that correct?
Yes, there's a Maryland Federation is what it's called, of
and
NARF.
You're all retired or current and federal employees?
That is correct.
And what's going on? Are they all bailing ship?
Not yet. The statistic is that about half of the federal workforce is within 5 years of retirement. And a number
Oh, that's fast.
Yeah, we're running out of time. The concern is that these are your most experienced employees, people who know what is safe, what isn't safe. And as they leave, the question is, can you attract people of equal caliber to come in and take their place?
So what departments are we talking about that are the most
All
scary if we think about it?
Well, okay, there are several actually. A big one is the EPA. The EPA employees are much put upon, I'll put it that way, and they're leaving as fast as they are able. And so that is just fine with some people because they don't want anyone checking on what things might be in the drinking water or what things might be in the air. But it's true for across the board. Any regulatory agency, Food and Drug Administration, things that, if we buy food or if we buy water or if we get water, we assume it's safe to consume. And that's because there's someone somewhere along the chain who is looking after that. And that's true also for things like the TSA inspectors. We get on an airplane. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that the person sitting next to you isn't carrying a sidearm, unless they're supposed to.
Well, I've heard there's a lot of issues with the TSA, that their pay is very low, that some of them can't afford to drive from home to work, so they're sleeping in their cars at work.
That's correct. And in particular, high-end markets like San Francisco, for example, the wages these folks are paid are inadequate. They can't live there, so they have to live some distance away. And that's where the driving and the other costs that they incur trying to just have a job. And they're making something like minimum wage. When they set up TSA, apparently they set up some different pay bands. They're not like regular government employees, and their ability to increase their salary is also limited.
Oh, okay.
Is it also a matter of policy where, the head of the EPA at one point sued the EPA like 40 times while he was in state government? The head of energy, wanted to disband the Department of Energy. So are there policy issues involved?
That's a big driver, because if you're discouraged from doing your best, doing your job to the best of your ability, because upper management is not only not going to reward you, but they're going to denigrate you if they can for doing that. That's a discouragement, and people are saying, the heck with this, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Well, traditionally, the pay in the government is always a little bit lower than the private sector, but you do it because of a sense of serving your country, you're doing some good, and but it
It's
sounds
about-
like we're losing a little bit of that now.
We're losing more and more of that, and ultimately, we're all going to pay for it. Those agencies were set up when they were set up for a reason. They were put in place to protect us: water, food, air traffic. Be glad they're there. But if you don't have people of equal caliber or better caliber coming in to replace the ones who are leaving, then the chances that a bad thing will happen are increased. It's part of the adage from Murphy's Law, which is that if you want a winning track team, you need one guy who can jump 7 feet, not 7 people who can jump 1 foot.
So what's the answer?
Yeah.
So what can be done? Because I remember when the government was shut down,
Yeah.
TSA workers had to work without pay,
Yes.
and a lot of them already work paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And it was not even retroactive when they got back, right?
No. The Congress didn't handle that very well.
Right. So my question again is, so what's the answer, right? To be able to retain that talent, because before it used to be a career, and now it's kind of not looked at as a long-term career.
Not if you're smart. This is a kind of a doesn't have a great future. Okay. Now it could. Many Western European countries, for example, take very good care of their infrastructure, their human infrastructure, for good reason.
And you have 30 seconds to tell us what that reason is.
They want to keep their taxpayers intact. It comes down to that. I mean, they're there to protect us. And to say one thing about the comment about why somebody goes to work for the federal government. I've worked on all 3 sectors: federal, academic, and industry.
Okay, quickly.
Quickly.
Finish your thought.
The federal employment is the only one where I had to take an oath.
Okay. Yeah. So you're doing it for country.
Love the country.
All right. Well, on that last word, I hope you'll come back and we'll talk about it some more, because it sounds like a really important issue to really explore. Thank you so much. So Maria, Committee for Montgomery, right?
Yes.
So you're the executive director, and you guys have been working really hard this past legislative session.
We have been. So Committee for Montgomery is a coalition of business, labor, education, and civic organizations that lobbies the state legislature on behalf of the people of Montgomery County. And this past legislative session, we focused on the Kirwan Commission, on Education and Innovation and Excellence in Education, which resulted in the legislation, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which is a groundbreaking new bill to reform public education in the state and to help provide the pipeline for the kinds of workers that Bruce was talking about.
But the governor didn't sign it.
But the governor did not sign
And
it.
there's issues about funding
Yes,
in the future.
there are issues about, and they separated out the policy and the funding issues. They deferred the funding issues for the next legislative session, which actually gives advocates some time to learn about the scintillating topic of education funding, but actually give them a chance to really organize themselves and learn and figure out what are the new funding sources. So Committee for Montgomery is actually going to continue to try to facilitate that conversation through our annual meeting on June 3rd at 8 o'clock in the morning at Universities at Shady Grove, where we'll have a panel of experts looking at these funding issues, including tax reform, alternative sources of funding.
So it's June 3rd.
Yes.
At 8
a.m. Really, the program
For
actually
those who are
starts
not
at
early
8:30. Our board meeting is at 8, and our
Okay.
program starts at 8:30. But we really encourage community members to come out because this is an
Why
important
do you guys
issue.
want the community to come out? What can the
Yeah.
community do to participate?
Well,
and be heard?
particularly in Montgomery County, there's a lot of concern about the role that Montgomery County plays in the state in terms of education funding, and for us to have a voice and to advocate for, the most vulnerable sectors of students in our state, in our county, and in our state. We need to educate ourselves and understand what those funding issues are, and really face the fact that it's a huge challenge, and there's some urgency around it if we're really going to improve education
I
in the
think
state.
one of the biggest challenges that we face in this county is actually the perception
Yes.
that the county has in the rest of the state,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So especially when it comes to bringing funding for education or other things, because we are seen, although I think we're the economic motor of the state,
Sure.
we are seen as as a county that has enough resources, and we're very well off.
Right.
So to me, the challenge is,
Yes.
as much as educating the locals, is educating the other,
Rest of the state.
The rest of
the
the
rest of the
Absolutely.
state,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And saying that we in Montgomery County also suffer
That's
from
exactly
some
right.
of the disparities when it comes to equity in the area of education.
Absolutely.
We still have children of color
Yep.
that are not graduating, that are not performing at a level that's satisfactorily in reading and math and science and the whole even STEM area. And that they're not graduating,
Right.
and even when they start college, right? I think Dr. Polizeri was like 70% of the kids have to do
remedial work.
remedial,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we suffer from
Sure.
the same symptoms of others. So I
Absolutely.
think educating the rest of
Yeah.
our colleagues and people who do advocacy in education is just as
Absolutely.
essential.
And one of the things that we did at CFM was we reached out and we were working in collaboration with a number of other advocates across the state precisely for that reason, to change the narrative and to help people understand that we're all working toward the same goals, and that's to help the most vulnerable students everywhere, and to let people know that there are far more in Montgomery County than anybody really understands. So, yeah.
What are the biggest challenges that they have for allocating the funds? I know there's a formula and
Right. Well, they're gonna have to revamp the funding formulas, and that, of course, is going to be a huge lift. But there's a recognition that the amount of money that this is going to take is going to require some real creative thinking about alternative funding sources, about issues around accountability, how the money is spent. That's something the governor's very concerned about. And so we really need to, as citizens, not just of Montgomery County, but of the state, to really be involved in these conversations because they affect all of us quite directly.
And I know finally they did do the allocation of the casino
Yes.
funding, finally to go and be totally allocated
Yeah.
to solely to education, which
Right.
it was the way it was supposed to
Yeah.
be from the beginning.
Right,
So-
exactly. So we just have to stay on top of these issues, and then, NCFM will be looking at additional issues to work on in the legislature. But having started with education, we're not going to let it go. We're going to keep working on it because you have to work on it for
so it's June
several
3rd,
years. Yes,
8
8
but
a.m.
8:30 is okay.
8:30 is okay.
at the University of
at
Shady Grove. All right,
Yeah.
so please don't forget and please go.
Yes.
We have to take a break. Be right back. And we're back. So Grace Rivera, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I hear you have the scoop on what's going on with appointments.
I wouldn't say the scoop, but I know that you guys wanted me to talk a little bit about the appointments and the importance of those appointments in our county for specific departments, right? The
So
heads of
there's a lot of
specific-
vacancies, but
True.
but
quite a
and
few.
including the chief of police.
Yes, the chief of police is a very key appointment for our county, especially after all that has happened in the last couple of weeks.
So tell us a little bit about the incident that happened in the White Oak area with 4 African men.
It's such an unfortunate incident to see in our community, right? We always think of Montgomery County as the edge of civility and inclusivity and equity and all these great things that we talk about. So to have an incident where these young African American men were at a McDonald's in White Oak, and then the police came and charged them with trespassing. So for those who saw the video, saw that one of the officers uses the N-word. But it was just more than just the word being used. It was like even the reason why they were stopped, why they were searched, the fact that their pictures were taken, and some of them, they were all waiting to get rights to work.
Were they minors? Were they younger than
No,
18?
they were actually, I believe they were all like between
18,
18 to like 22. They were young men waiting for work. I believe all of them lost their jobs because
Yeah,
of
so
the incident.
this really makes why the chief of police, who is the leader of that department
essential,
and sets
right?
the tone,
Absolutely.
is essential. So
Yeah.
Tell me, are they doing any community outreach or hearing from the community about?
So we know there is a national search for a chief of police right now, just like they did with other, with other divisions like Health and Human Services, and then we also have the Department of Human Resources is an opening, the libraries, and a few others, right? One of the things that I applaud our county executive doing is that he's going to have a town hall meeting at Kennedy High School to ask the community what attributes should their chief of police have.
When will that be?
So that's coming up, I believe, June 16th. But people can go on the website of the county executive, even the county council, and check to see when that is. Such an important thing to do at this point, because it is a community, engagement job, right? This is your civilian workforce, and at the end of the day, these are your neighbors and so on who decided to take this job, which is not an easy job to do either, and they put their lives on the line.
Well, let me ask you,
So-
what are some of the attributes that you would think is important for a chief of police to have?
So I think somebody who understands the complexity of dealing with a majority minority population, the change of demographics that our county has been through, understanding where people are coming from, and also being able to set the tone, to be the example, right, when it comes to dealing with the public every day.
Well, we're almost one half year into the administration. Are we on schedule as compared to other executives in terms of appointing heads of departments right now?
I think, we're a little bit behind, but it's also part of the vetting process, which I think, they want to have the right people heading these departments, because these are, hopefully long-term.
Well, you want to get the right person and not
Exactly.
to rush the wrong person. right?
Exactly, right? These are very key positions that that affect the million-plus residents in the county.
exactly.
Everyone is affected.
What
by-
opportunities do citizens and organizations have to, provide input in the process?
So I think, we have a very open council. I think, you should reach out to the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which is Council Member Sidney Katz, who's been a wonderful leader, who's been around for a long time, who was the mayor of the city of Gaithersburg. So he's seen the changes in our county go through. So he's very open to hearing from the community. Our president council, President Navarro is also very eager to always hear from the community. So I think if you have something to say about any of these positions, you should make your voices heard. I think it's important for our leaders.
So everyone needs
do
to remember that there's going to be a community meeting at Kennedy High School.
Yep.
And to get the details and information,
Right.
to check the county executive's website or the council.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much,
Sure.
Grace. So immigration.
Yes,
what
indeed.
a hot topic
As
to have.
always,
and we
right,
saved
Maria?
it for last. So tell me, we hear all the negative
Yes,
every
indeed.
day,
Every day.
multiple times in the day about immigration and the president's views and policies with regard to it. What do you have to tell us that's positive about immigration?
Well, I mean, we are a nation of immigrants, and look at the companies, the iconic American companies. I mean, people would be surprised how many of those companies were founded and
Right.
started by immigrant entrepreneurs.
Do you have a couple of examples?
Of
for
course.
us?
Think about who are the two biggest companies that start with A that everybody talks about?
Amazon.
Amazon and Apple,
Absolutely,
right?
Apple.
Apple. Amazon, founded by Jeff Bezos. His father was Miguel Bezos, born in Cuba.
Wow.
So there you are. Steve Jobs was adopted at a young age. His biological father was a Syrian immigrant, Syrian refugee. Abdul Janaldi. So, I mean, and his sister, his biological sister, is a famous writer, Mona Simpson. They did not know that they were brothers and sisters until much later in life, after both had become very successful. Just down the street, Capital One Finance, Capital One Bank, founded by another immigrant, co-founded by another immigrant from Britain. So if you look at the companies that are just iconic, so big, and in the United States economy, about 45% of the Fortune 500 companies were founded by or co-founded by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant.
Well, my favorite example, actually, that everyone looks at it and they think that's 100%
right?
American, is Disney.
Walt
Walt Disney was
Disney.
from Canada. He was not
Well,
American.
well, his father was from Canada, whose father was born actually in the province of Canada before it became a country. It was still a British province, British colony, I guess, at the point. So, and then later on, they moved to the United States. Mitt Romney's father was born in Mexico.
Right.
You know, John McCain, while his father served in the military, he was born outside of the United States. We have the first lady immigrant since Louisa Adams, the wife of John Quincy Adams.
Right.
Think about that. 200 years later,
Right.
Wow.
we have the first lady who's an immigrant.
But what I love about this point is the example of how the integration of these immigrants in our USA, in our America, has brought such great things, you know, whether
Sure.
it's a product, a service, or a business. And, you know, that multicultural,
Yeah.
you know, fabric is what makes us great.
It's that mindset of taking a chance, leaving, or
Yeah.
being forced to leave your home country,
That's true.
taking a big chance. And now there's talk about giving merit points for immigration applicants. If you have a PhD, you get X number of points. You have a master's, you have X number of points. But you can't quantify entrepreneurship. You
Right.
can't quantify creativity. And how can you give points for someone who's 5 years old or 10 years old?
about
Should we
potential.
allow this person to come to the United States? Give them some points because they could be a great entrepreneur. They could be a great creative person. There's no way to do that. And think about the numbers. Facts are facts, numbers are numbers. 25% of US children have parents who are immigrants. About 15% of the population are immigrants. So that's about 40%. And what did we just say about what is the percentage of Fortune 500 companies? About 40 to 45%. So there's a great parity there that you just have to take a chance on everyone, and just to give points and allow people who have PhDs and engineering degrees to enter the United States is going to be a very restrictive. And like federal employees, I fear for the future creativity and entrepreneurship of the United States if we go along that line.
If I could just interject here, our Rotary Club provides dictionaries to elementary school children, and apparently these are enormously popular. I'm wondering, in terms of integrating recent immigrants into our society, you know, the power of language,
Right.
the power of written and spoken word. Is there any effort that you know of to try to facilitate that? In other words, are there any programs? And it's more than ESL. It's more. It's,
Yeah.
this is true of so many languages, and
It's not just a language thing; it's a cultural
cultural.
Yeah.
and that's the education piece. Some of
Yeah.
our fellow guests in the.
Well, I think the best way to do that is to be a welcoming community,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? And to be acceptance of others who don't look like you, and not be fearful of that. And in Montgomery County, we are extremely,
Really good.
Yeah.
extremely blessed to have that kind of world, in a sense. And we are one of, some of the top cities in the country that are most diverse are in our county.
Right, exactly.
From the city of Gaithersburg, the whole Germantown area is a quadrant, which means it's 25, 25, 25, 25. I mean, my son goes to a school that, pretty much every country is represented.
And we're all better for it because
And
of that.
we are all better for that. And as we're starting to look at schools for him, he's a junior, he's looking at that mitigating factor. He wants to go to a school where he's going to be able
Right.
to share with others
That's
from
right.
different places, but who are Americans. if that
Well,
makes
that's
sense.
the last word, and a good last word. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Muy
I want to
bien.
thank all of you for joining me this week, and thank you for joining all of us this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Mariana Cordier. Please join us next week at the same time.